Welcome to another Good e-reader comparison video. This is Marcus.
This is Nick.
Today we're going to compare two of the premier tablets so far of 2011. The Motorola Xoom. This is the Wi-Fi 3G Verizon model.
And the Apple iPad 2. So this is Apple versus Android.
Right. So we're going to get into it showing specs first. And Nick, why don't you start us off as far as screen size and everything?
Alright, so we're just going to go back and forth here between the two devices. The display on the iPad 2, 9.7 inches, 1024 by 768 pixels.
The Motorola Xoom is 10.1 capacitive touchscreen and a resolution is 1280 by 800.
So it is a little bit larger screen size and bigger resolution on the Motorola.
Right. What's the processor on?
This is featuring a 1 gigahertz Apple A5 dual-core processor.
And this has the NVIDIA Tegra 2 1 gigahertz dual-core processor.
Oh, I see. This is 512 MB DDR2 RAM.
And this is 1 gig of DDR2 RAM.
So that's going to come into play with the multitasking on the Motorola Xoom there.
Right. By default, the Apple iPad, as far as internal memory, you can get things from 16 gigs is the lowest to 64.
64 with a 32 interval in the middle.
So there's no way to upgrade the internal memory of the Apple iPad 2
without buying the amount when you purchase the device.
Whereas the Motorola Xoom comes with 32 gigs of internal memory, and you can further increase this via the micro SD card up to another 32. So you can get 64 gigs of internal memory on a Motorola Xoom without necessarily having to pay a lot more like you would the iPad 2.
And also you can put multiple SD cards in there. For example, if you fill one up, take it out, pop another card in there, and away you go.
Right. What's the operating system on?
Operating system is iOS 4.3 on the Apple.
And this is the first tablet featuring Google Android 3.0, and this again was an operating system designed exclusively for tablets in mind. Now, both of these devices have dual cameras. What's the camera situation on the iPad 2?
Unfortunately, Marcus, they don't release a whole lot of that, even Apple themselves. All they're telling us about the front-facing camera is that it's good enough for FaceTime and photos and slight video, but all they're saying is that it's VGA. They're not releasing any sort of megapixels, resolution, anything like that.
What about the rear-facing camera?
Rear-facing camera on this, once again, very limited information. Quote-unquote, it shoots 720p. That's all we were told.
So it looks like the Motorola Xoom wins out on the camera quality. It has a 2 megapixel front-facing camera, and it has a 5 megapixel rear-facing camera. And this is for taking pictures, shooting video, and the front-facing camera would be used for video chatting using programs like Skype for Android, which we just found on the Android market. So you can video chat via Skype. Okay, so as far as specs, both of these devices do 1080p out. So that means if you buy the Apple AV digital dongle, you can actually have an HDMI out from your Apple iPad 2 directly to your television, so you can download and watch 720p on the device and then stream 1080p to your TV. And you can do the same with this, although it does use
generic mini HDMI, so you don't have to have a proprietary jack like the Apple.
More or less, they both do the same types of video and audio formats.
They both do Wi-Fi. Both the 3G and the Wi-Fi versions both do Wi-Fi.
As well as Bluetooth.
Exactly.
So, battery life, what is the iPad 2 clocking in?
Some estimates are saying 10 hours video, and this I would assume would be a straight video play, 140 hours audio, and on standby with applications in the background to a minimum, sitting at about 1 month for standby.
Okay, so with the Motorola Xoom, you'll get about 8.2 hours of general usage. you can, if you have the 3G and Wi-Fi off, it'll give you about 10 hours or so. If you want to just listen to music, the Motorola Xoom will get you about 3 days or about 10 hours of just streaming video. So
now it's hard to compare them in terms of battery life because they're giving you such different ways they're measuring battery life.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't give it to either one just from the information we're given.
yeah, I would say it really depends on, you could really maximize your battery life on either of them by shutting Wi-Fi off,
Exactly.
by shutting 3G off. If you're just doing non-intensive stuff like listening to music, it'll last a lot longer than if you're watching full resolution video. You'll eat your battery faster as well. If you're have Wi-Fi and 3G on, you're browsing the web, you're listening to music, an hour later you're playing some games, the battery life is going to suddenly creep down.
General usage from what we've seen, they're pretty much on par. They're both really good.
Okay, so now that we ran by the specs, let's rank these tablets side by side.
All right, let's start with the right side top. Where are we going?
Let's check the top.
All right, on the Apple iPad, we feature nothing on the top of the device.
On top here, you have your headphone jack. You also have this little interesting feature here, which actually, you take it out and you can actually have both a SIM card in there and
a micro SD card down in there. It's kind of hard to see right now, but when you really get into it, it's very straightforward.
it's dual layers. So
Yes.
it's sort of like your like SIM card is on the bottom, and your SD would be on the top.
You're
So-
basically just putting two different things on either side of the circuit board on the inside of the device. Very, very straightforward.
Right. Now, this is locked to Verizon, so if you put a 3G or if you put a SIM card in there from another provider, it actually will not work.
Exactly.
So let's flip it onto the side here.
All right. We have the proprietary jack for the Apple just data transfer, and then we have a speaker, which we'll get into later when we compare audio, that actually faces backwards. So
This is your volume on the side. To flip it to the other side here.
on the Apple, we have volume up, down, and this sliding lock can be set to either orientation lock or mute.
Here, what you see here is
That is the mini HDMI cable. That's the micro USB slot.
and you also have
You have two Torx. I'm not sure what number they are, but these are two Torx screws. So if you need to get your device open to replace a battery or whatever, you don't use a Phillips or anything. This is a Torx. It's about eight-pointed screwdriver.
okay.
So it's very useful.
So let's flip these devices facing down.
All right. There you go.
So you'll see here on the Apple iPad 2, this is where the 720p camera is, where you don't actually have any type of LED flash or anything like that here. Where the Motorola Xoom, you have your 5 megapixel camera here, and then you have your LED.
LED flash.
Yep, here, and you also have stereo speakers, one on each side.
I'm just going to say this now. That is exactly how you lay out a speaker setup. You notice that they're at the top of the device, away from where you're holding it at the bottom, much like you would like this if you're watching a video. They're on either side, they're left and right, audio, so it's full stereo. Whereas the iPad, it's right here. There's one, it faces back, and if you hold it this way or this way, your hand muffles the speaker either way. So we've mentioned this in a bunch of other videos we've done. I am not too big of a fan of the speaker setup on this device.
Right, and although I do like the fact that the Motorola Xoom has 2 different speakers, they are in the back. So I mean,
That's
most
true.
people when they're say reading on the couch, reading on a bed, the tablet's lying flat down, which means that the speakers are facing down. That's the same with the iPad too.
Exactly.
The speakers are facing down, so you always get that muffled effect. The only way that you're going to be able to actually hear the speakers is if you're holding the tablet in landscape mode, or if you're holding it in portrait mode, or if you have some sort of stand, or you're holding it. But most people, for long-term use, you'll have it nestled in your lap.
Yeah.
You'll have it on your bed. You'll have it, sort of lying down on the couch. And so both of these tablets sort of suffer from the speakers being on the back where you're normally about 50%, 60% of the time have sort of like a lackluster audio experience. I do like the fact that there's two different speakers on the Xoom versus the one speaker on the Apple iPad. So if that speaker's muffled, all of your sound's muffled. But if only one speaker is muffled on here, well, then you still have another one outputting sound. And even if both speakers are muffled, you'll still get better sound on the Xoom than versus one speaker flat down on the iPad 2.
Totally agree.
Now, these are two different devices. Of course, this is Apple iOS and this is Google Android. These are the newest operating systems that really have come out. And with Android, it does allow you a lot of customizations. It does allow you live wallpapers. It does allow you to put widgets.
Just get a live wallpaper going here.
So this is more or less going to be playing off of the internal microphone here. So as we're talking, the wavelengths will change. And then when we're not talking, you see that they sort of go back to flatline. So that is a little bit... I can't really see what I'm doing.
You just choose the holo spiral or whatever it's called.
Okay. So, I mean, it does... The one benefit of Google Android 3.0 is that the widgets is very more advanced compared to previous iterations of Android. Whereas the Apple iPad 2 doesn't really allow you to have a lot of flexible changing of the graphical user interface of your overall experience. It's all within settings menus and things like that. So I definitely probably say that for being able to customize your experience, Android is this more superior operating system. But what we have noticed is that, especially with Android 3.0 on devices like the Xoom, as of the recording date today, it does not have Flash. It does not support Adobe Reader. It does not support Adobe Digital Editions. So if you buy books, you can't transfer them to the device. You can't watch any Flash-based content. We'll run some other tests, but it is certainly a young operating system, and it's not without its share of bugs. Whereas the Apple iOS operating system, you'll never really see a crash. I've never had the iPad 1 or 2 crash on me at all.
Definitely.
And they both do multitasking, so you can access your multitask features by double-clicking on this button, and you can see all of the things open. Same with the Google Android. You can click the multitask button here, and you can see all the different things that we have open. And it also labels what they are. So you can see we have the Market, Skype, the Gallery, My Apps, and Camera. And same here, you can really kind of get a sense of what's open and what's not. So they both do multitasking. They both have dual-core processors. I would say the Motorola Xoom, spec-wise, as far as just internal specs, I would probably say the Motorola Xoom wins out in terms of better quality cameras, the addition of dual speakers. So you have stereo speakers, but you have a pair of them, as well as you actually have a micro SD card, so you can actually... Expandable memory, and the addition of HDMI out, and being able to connect it up to your computer to transfer media easily than you could with the iPad. If I have, say this is my iPad 2, it's recognized with iTunes at my house, I'm at Nick's house here, and I'm trying to... set up apps, it'll probably delete everything on it. So overall management of the device, I would have to give it to Android, as well as being able to... I don't need to buy a dongle for this to stream it to my TV for full HDMI, but with the iPad 2, I do have to buy the Apple Digital AV adapter, which does cost extra money, whereas with this, it's a little bit more expensive baseline than the Apple iPad, but everything that I need is really just built into the device. Now, when you first buy the iPad 2, you actually have a FaceTime application. And this is Apple's equivalent of video chat in real time. So you can only talk to people that actually have either an iPhone or an iPad 2. Now, with the Motorola Xoom, they do have Skype now for Android. And one of the benefits of this is that I can chat with people who have any Android device. So Nick, if you have your smartphone, I can chat with you on my tablet to your smartphone.
Wonderful.
If you're on your PC, I can talk to you straight to your PC. So the benefits is that I would probably give video chatting and video conferencing to the Motorola Xoom merely because I don't have to rely on anybody to actually have an Apple product like a Mac PC or anything like that in order to video chat with them. So Skype and programs like that add much more versatility to be able to chat with people video to video, face to face in real time. So I would probably give video conferencing to the Motorola Xoom, but more particularly to the Android operating system.
Definitely.
Okay. So let's take a look at orientation speed, going from landscape to portrait mode. How do these like stack up? Because obviously they both have dual core processors, they both have a lot of the same internal components, but how does that really rank on daily tasks when you're going to be sweeping orientations? So we have it like this, and on a count of 3, let's bring it to portrait mode. 2, 3. Okay, and bring it back. 1, 2, 3. Yikes.
We've always seen the Apple iPad and iPad 2 have amazing orientation speed. So I'm not even going to really compete these two together.
Yeah.
I would give it to the Apple hands down.
Apple hands down wins switching it. They both do 360 degrees orientation from landscape to portrait mode. So unlike a lot of tablets that will only do 90 degrees or only landscape and portrait on one axis, this actually will do it on all axes. So they both have the same type of quality of games. Like, if you were to play Angry Birds on Android, it would be the exact same as really playing Angry Birds on the iOS version of it. There are some changes, of course. Most of the time it's just perspective. Now, let's take a look at the ebook reading experience. This is iBooks, which when you fire up the iPad 2 for the first time, it gives you sort of an indication on, I kind of had it.
Where's the bookshelf? Yeah. There we go.
I kind of had it, so here's your bookshelf, and what I was saying is when you power on your iPad 2 for the first time, it prompts you to download iBooks, which is pretty well the base application that the iPad uses to read books. Now this is...
I really like the way that Android laid the bookshelf out, how it has this kind of curved perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice. Not to say I don't like the bookshelf. Who doesn't like a standard bookshelf? Very nice. Very organized.
It's simple, it's elegant. Yeah. Whereas the more books that you have in the Android interface, it'll actually scroll almost in 3D. And so let's take a look at how ebooks actually look. Let's just open up a random book here.
I will choose Chinese.
So this is sort of the interface. They both peek on what's on the other side before you actually do it. Now, what Nick is doing is he's actually reading an enhanced audiobook, an enhanced ebook, which means that it could do audio and video. Whereas with this application, I haven't really seen any enhanced ebooks yet for the Google ebooks. So they both more or less do the same things. If we were to just to touch it at the same time, how does speed go? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you can see page turns are relatively quick. Now, here's really the pro and cons as I see it, is that I really like that the way that the Google Android book application looks. Now, the difference is that with the iBooks application, it allows you to sideload your own books in. So if I have my EPUB library on my PC, I can easily transfer that to my iPad 2, and I could like load this up with books that I just downloaded randomly from the internet, and I could, import my own PDFs and so on. Now, there isn't a whole lot of books loaded in the iPad 2 yet, but let's just give you an indication on how a full library would look. I have the iPad 1 here, and I'm just going to give it kind of a minute to load, but you can see I have a ton of books here. Most of these books I've loaded myself, books I've downloaded from the internet, as well as it organizes them into PDF files, and it organizes them into, I could even create collections where I could organize fantasy into one genre, this into another genre, and the Google Books application really doesn't have that type of flexibility to be able to just see PDFs, just to see normal books. And you can see here that the shelf looks really tight. You could see I could have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 per shelf, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves there. So that's a lot of books I had visible there, where with the Google way of seeing things, let's try to find the functionality to go back to, okay, here we go. So there's only limited amount of books here that you can see here versus, say, a full library of here. So despite the fact that Android kind of has this kind of 3D kind of panoramic view, I would probably say that iBooks as the stock application has more empowerment to you as being an end user to be able to load in your own PDF files from the internet, being able to load in your own EPUB books, which is the ebook format of choice for iBooks, and it allows you to really organize things well into collections. The iBook store, I would still say, is really hurting, just as the Google bookstore itself is really hurting. It's mainly full of scanned books from other sources, and it doesn't really have a ton of new titles, whereas the iBook store has mainly more newer titles. So I'd probably have to give the default reader that comes with both of the devices to the iPad 2 and iBooks, and for all the reasons that we just basically ran down for you. So how does the internet experience come into play with both of these devices? So what we're going to do is we're going to type into the search bar more or less at the same time. We're going to go to goodyreader.com/blog and see how that looks.
Now you'll know that I kind of used the .com key, whereas Marcus didn't. So, I mean, they're both very, very, very good at typing. Don't diss one because of the other. I mean, they're both very well off when it comes to typing. So
now, with both the iPad 2 and Xoom, there are different web browsers that you can get for Android. You can get Dolphin HD, you can get Opera. For the iPad 2, it does have its share of different OSs or different internet browsers that you can get as well. So you can see here that we are in tabbed browsing, and we can create tabs on the fly. You can do the same, pretty well here by hitting the tabs here, creating like a new page and so on. So they both have more or less different ways of going about it, whereas the way that the default WebKit browser does on Android, it's a little bit more intuitive. It kind of looks like that Internet Explorer or the Firefox way of tab browsing. So let's see. We're both riding on the same Wi-Fi connection. We're not doing 3G on any of these. So what we want to do is click on the first article and see who wins just loading up a standard article on a goodyreader.com/blog. So on 3, 1, 2, 3.
See, the Apple iPad 2 came out ahead by probably just about 1 second.
Right. So let's just take a look if we were to be scrolling, or let's try going back to just the home page again, because you saw that they both pretty well loaded, but at the same time the Apple iPad 2 came in a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But if you were to just be scrolling up and down a page, it seems like they're pretty well even as far as being able to fastly scroll.
I wouldn't say either of them has the edge,
Right.
so to speak.
What about pinching and zooming?
Let's
Because
go
obviously that's a task that you're going to be doing a lot. So let's just try pinching and zooming and see how that experience looks.
You know, the Apple iPad looks a bit smoother while it's getting to the bigger font and more zoomed in.
Yeah.
That's not to say that this is doing it more slowly, but
You almost see it like as it's expanding from text font increase to text font increase. You can see that it's like a slew of sudden abrupt changes.
almost like you're missing a few frames in between, but it gets there the same speed.
Yeah.
It's just on the way. It looks like you get a little bit of chopping when it's going from the small to the bigger text, whereas this,
Right.
you don't really see a lot of that.
Okay, and so let's just say that we're zoomed in. Now, I would almost say that the iPad 2 text looks a little bit better zoomed in all the way. Is there any way that we can kind of zoom in and show this? Maybe let's throw it both in portrait mode so we can almost see this a little bit better.
This just looks a little more bold.
Yeah. And this is the default stuff. We haven't messed around with any of the features, so there might be a way to customize like things to your more experience. But you can almost see that this is a deeper black, and this is almost a blue.
Mm-hmm. Blue-gray almost.
Yeah. So I would almost say that this looks a little bit more vibrant, as well as pinching and zooming. It was more fluid, where it was almost with the Motorola Xoom. Is that you could almost see it like frame by frame as the fonts like increase. Now, what I really like about Google Android 3.0, unlike other versions of Google Android, is to zoom, they often had magnifying glasses
Yes.
that you had to type. You couldn't actually pinch and zoom. So this is a feature on the Motorola Xoom that I greatly like. Okay, so now that we kind of like checked out the video, the internet experience, how does watching videos look like on these devices? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch a standard embedded video, and we'll just let's watch the second one, I think. So we're just waiting for this to load. And hands-on Motorola Xoom review. So these are embedded YouTube videos on blogs. Now, I'm sure that when you're surfing the web that you'll obviously come across embedded YouTube videos on forums, on blogs, and so on. So let's just hit the play button. Now, you obviously saw that our interface totally changed. And this is mainly because the Motorola Xoom does not have Flash, so it's not able to do embedded YouTube videos, where iOS was customized to do embedded YouTube videos. So let's just sort of go full screen, and let's just sort of play the video and see if there's any type of, does one do the resolution any better than the other? Oops.
Oh, I missed it there. Let's go back to browser. Oh. Play. Let's turn this down.
So you can see that it's almost like you have more viewing area on.
I also don't like how when you expand, you do cut the edges a bit. For example, you get www.goodyreader.com, and when I zoom back out, you get the full triple W. So, not liking the full screen kind of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, you do have, but you could see how when we sort of did that, it got kind of blurry. So you can see how blurry goodyreader.com reads there. So
nice and crisp now, though.
Yeah, it looks nice and crisp now. Let's sort of go back on the timeline a bit.
Yeah, it's playing.
So
where are you right about?
Yeah.
Right about. There.
I would probably say that just from you saw kind of I was trying to click on a timeline and accidentally exited the program, I would probably give pretty well like with the default player here on both sides, probably give it to the iPad 2. You can see even on the same images right now.
Oh, got it at the same time.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Let's try to put this up to the screen here. I don't know if it's coming across in the video, but the Apple
just looks
iPad
a little
2
brighter.
Looks a little more vibrant.
You notice you do get a bigger image on the Motorola Xoom, whereas if I try to go into my bigger image, I'm cutting off a lot of my screen. So they both have their pros and cons, but the full playability, yeah, probably Apple.
Yeah, I'd probably say the YouTube video streaming on, I think this is like a 480i video.
Right.
They're looking relatively the same, but I would say that the iPad 2 is a little bit more vibrant as far as the movie, as far as like the YouTube viewing experience. Now I know that once the addition of Flash comes in, you'll be able to watch embedded YouTube videos and web pages. So pretty well the workaround that you're seeing now is what anybody has to do that actually is an early adapter of this. Now, speaking of videos, let's see how just pure HD video ranks up. So we're going to, and this is something that's like a little bit disconcerting, is how did you get to the movie screen just now?
I pressed videos.
Okay, now this is like an Android thing, and this is kind of a Motorola Xoom thing, is that where does it say videos on here? Nowhere.
It does not.
So how do I know if I'm going to the app screen what plays videos? Now, I know because I've had a lot of devices, but it just doesn't make sense that I have to hit the gallery in order to play videos. And I don't really understand why I have to go to a gallery rather than the iPad 2 is so much more intuitive. If I want to watch a movie, I'll hit the icon that says movie. Where with the Motorola Xoom, I have to hit the icon that says gallery. And I have to choose whether I want to see pictures, whether I want to see video, and so on. So let's take a look at some of this like stock footage. Is this starting at the same spot?
Yes, it should be the very start here. US player, okay.
So it almost looks that you saw in the sky on the iPad 2 is a deeper shade of blue.
The quality's about the same, but the colors are coming out a little bit brighter on the iPad.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of a bit disconcerting because the Motorola Xoom really totes that its resolution is better than the iPad 2. You know, it's 10.1 instead of 9.7, and it does have better pixel resolution. But I don't know if I see that with the video quality here. And this is the exact same video. The video is in 720, and this is for high definition video. This is kind of ideal, what you want to see.
This doesn't really do too much when you do this double tap, just letting you guys know. It's a zoom, but it's not a very useful zoom. It just cuts everything.
Yeah.
See this rock ledge, it completely cuts it, so I don't know what they're doing with that. But the videos, yeah, the quality was about the same, but it just seems like
the colors were a little bit more vibrant.
Were a lot better on the Apple iPad.
Speaking of such, what about pictures? I think we both have the same type of
photos.
So this is the exact same photo here.
Hold on. This one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just take a look at this. And then take a look at that. You can almost see that the iPad 2 has a little bit better resolution. I mean, it's hard for this to come across like on video, but certainly with like pictures, at least to my eyes here with both of these here. Now we have studio lighting, but even if we turn the studio lighting off,
yeah,
we would get the same type of resolution. You know, the greens are a little bit more greener. Let's take a look at the sky. In the sky here, it's almost like you can see a little bit more clouds than you can see here. What about the next picture? Yeah, so this is the next picture here. You can almost see that, to me here, this mountain looks more gray. Whereas the mountain here looks, you can see more shades of brown. And the trees are greener green rather than these, which are a little bit more, the trees are not resoluting closer here than they are there. And I mean, you can, I think I'm looking exactly how this shows up in video, and I would say that, yeah, I mean, you can see that the iPad 2 is looking a little bit more better. And so we just wanted to shut off the lights just to show that under normal conditions here, like when the lights are off late at night, side-by-side comparison.
Oh, those are hot studio lights.
Okay, so we've ran down a lot of tests. We've showed you YouTube videos. We've showed you videos in the video player. We've also showed you ebooks and things like that. And how do the ecosystems really differ? So let's take a look at the Android market. And this is where you would go to get apps. And you loaded...
App Store.
Okay. Now, this is the interface here. Now, just from the way that this is looking, this looks a little bit more laid out. You know, what's new, what's hot, what's come out lately, as well as features on the bottom, features, Genius, top charts, categories, and so on. You don't really see, if I want to know what's the hottest Android applications, it really just gives me a category of things here, you know, like if I want to see games, if I want to look at sports and tools, whereas if I wanted to go to, say, categories here, and it's a little bit more, you know, it shows you the featured products, whereas here it's just data, you know, it doesn't really tell me very much. So what category did we click on there again?
Just clicked on category, didn't click on a specific one yet. Want me to choose one?
Okay, so
navigation.
Let's both change like lifestyle.
All right.
Just to kind of show you the way the markets are laid out.
Well, it's pretty much identical now, little rectangles.
Yeah. So here's the featured one. You know, the top free, best selling. Okay, so it's a little bit more laid out when you go deeper into it. But from just loading it up for the first time, I think Apple and the App Store were just organized a little bit laid out. Even though that these menus have changed, you can still jump between featured, Genius, top charts, you know, updates and so on. But here you don't really see any type of things that say, okay, you can go back a screen. Oh, you know, you can jump from lifestyles now to right to games. But no, it's like I really can't. I gotta, you know, will this click? No. Will this click? No. It just brings me back to the default screen. So, let's just look at apps. I mean, the Android official App Store really does not have that many apps versus the App Store for Apple. I mean, they just have hands down double or triple the amount of apps that the Android store has. Also, you notice that the App Store for Apple has major publishers making games. They have games made by THQ, by Electronic Arts. They have major game publishers making games for the iPad 1 and the iPad 2, whereas for Android, you really don't see Sony or Square Enix or major companies making those platform-specific games. It looks like all of the major publishers are really in the App Store and betting on the success of the iPhone and the iPad to be able to reach as many people as possible. Whereas with Android and with the Motorola Xoom in particular, there you won't really see the type of really excellent games on Android than you see on the App Store. Now, it's sort of a difference between operating systems and reach and things like that. With Google Android, you really do see a lot more Google functionality. Like for Google Maps, I can set that to be my background. So I could set it to be a live wallpaper. pretty well, if I want to get the most popular apps like Facebook, the weather, YouTube, things like that, I can easily find those sort of things. But if I just want to find out, like, hey, what's new? What's the best game right now? It's a little bit harder to find it in Android. So I would probably say it's a really complicated to say what is better because they're both so different and unique. I would probably give content distribution probably to the iPad in terms of how many apps are available, how many games are available, the fact that we're in the App Store now, but if you launch iTunes, which Android sort of fuses both iTunes and the App Store in one platform, I can't really get a whole lot of music, movies, live TV shows, things like that. I mean, they just don't have that. I know Google's working on a music and video service integrating into their app store, but right now, unless I download third-party tools like Netflix, and I have to know about that in order to download it, I have to be tech savvy enough to be able to know enough about these apps to say, okay, I want those apps, I should do it. At least with the App Store, it's a little bit harder to be able to find things. And I mean, I can't even buy music. I can't buy movies from the Android store. Whereas with the Apple iPad using iTunes or the App Store, I can find any type of game, I can find any type of app, I can find any type of movie, TV show, and so on. Where the App Store, the Android store, it pretty well lacks in terms of quality. The average game on Android is, you can really tell it's a basement game written by one dude as opposed to the average game for iPad, although they both have their share of burping and farting games and, drunkometers
gun
and
shooting games.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, in terms of major companies behind it, I'd probably say that Apple wins, mainly because, I mean, Apple partners themselves directly through Rupert Murdoch and Times and his News Corp company to put out an app called The Daily, where you don't really see that on Android. So I'd probably give content distribution to the iPad. What do you say?
Yeah, it definitely has tons more apps than Android does.
Okay, so you saw we've run a lot of tests. Both of them sort of will do a lot of emails. Of course, Android has built-in Google functionality, which allows you to do a lot more things. Android devices allow you to do more deeper, richer, custom experiences. From any device, you can root the device and be able to do a lot of kind of hacking and sort of doing that sort of thing. Whereas with the iPad, you can't really do a lot of the rooting and the hacking that you can with pure Android devices. So if you were to say, Nick, side by side, which device between the Motorola Xoom and the iPad 2, without we kind of build it up to be like Android versus Apple, which I don't want to play into it. I want to just say the Motorola Xoom as it is right now versus the iPad 2 as it is right now.
This has one port at the bottom, and it's Apple proprietary. This has tons of ports that you can have, cables laying around your house to transfer data, such. This, you put in a computer and you must sync it to put data onto it. It deletes your library and anyone else's library that you've transferred from if you're trying to move from iTunes library to iTunes library. It's very, very reliant on, it's mandatory that you use iTunes for this and just to sync your device, whereas this, you plug it in, it's an external hard drive, done.
Drag and drop files.
Drag and drop into the categories. You can. I like this just a little bit more, just because you can. It's far less restrictive than this. I don't like being restricted to. This is what it is. Do it. Here's videos. Click on it, kind of thing. This is far more open for you to do whatever you want with it. I don't mind that it takes half a second more to orientate, as I mean, this is, I've never seen such fast orientation before. You can have as many things as you want running and it's going to do it.
Yeah.
The screen is very vibrant. it's very responsive, very fluid. Everything it does is just, fluid and flawless. But just with it being so restrictive on everything you do, you can't expand memory. You can't talk to anybody on FaceTime unless someone has specifically an iPod. You know what I mean? iPhone.
Yeah.
I just think it lets you do a lot more with this, minus the apps. Obviously, this has tons of apps. This is the app machine right here.
Yeah.
But you can just do so much more with this in terms of just a lengthy list of applications that you could do with this more than you can with this.
Yeah.
This is very Apple. This is very QuickTime. This is very iPod right here.
Yeah, I would say they're two very different devices aimed at two different kind of people. I would say if you're not very tech savvy, if you really don't have a lot of experience with handling technology, you've never really done a whole lot of advanced stuff, it's really hard to go wrong with iPad 2.
Exactly.
Certainly, you're not going to be deleting things by mistake or, going to be accidentally creating all these problems. I mean...
You want video, you press video, whereas this one, you got to know that gallery is kind of a directory for all your media. So then you have pictures, movies, camera, stuff like that. So,
right.
As Marcus mentioned, it's very straightforward on this device.
Yeah, even sort of managing the internal components. I mean, I see my total directory structure here.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you see, this is Kobo, this is media, this is movies, this is music, whereas this, you have to sync with iTunes. As I recall, this, we couldn't even film the first time startup because it wouldn't let us use the device without syncing it.
Yeah.
So I found that very frustrating because...
Yeah, we powered this on for the first time and we're going right away.
You do whatever you want. You go to the home screen and you flip on by, but this wouldn't even let you turn it on without syncing it. So that was just a little setback for me.
No, I agree. I mean, hardware-wise, they're basically about the same.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say the Xoom probably surpasses the iPad 2 in terms of just pure hardware. Although, from this video, over the tests that we've done, you've pretty well seen the pros and cons on the most average daily uses, from web surfing, to watching videos, to doing YouTube, to downloading new applications, to going from landscape and portrait mode, transferring data to and fro from your machine. I would probably recommend that the Motorola Xoom is aimed more towards moderate to advanced users, and that's really how you would get the most out of your device, is you being a tech-savvy person, you knowing enough that you could customize your own experience and really tailor the Android experience to your liking. If you're not so tech-savvy, which the average person these days are, then probably you might be better off getting the iPad 2. I'm torn between them both because I have both of these devices and I love them both equally, but I use them for two different purposes. I use the iPad 2 mainly to consume media, to play games, better quality games, to be able to have a deeper experience in terms of just consuming content, listening to podcasts, doing that sort of things. But when I actually want to do real work, I would probably do it on an Android device more than I would on iPad. So I would probably say that they're two different very devices. It's hard to say which one that I like better. I would probably say tech-wise, and for all the tests that we've conducted, I probably like the iPad 2 the best. It is restrictive, as you said. You really have to use iTunes to manage it, and I've been using the iPad since it existed, and I still don't have my audio library synced with iTunes, because I hate iTunes, but it's a necessary evil in order to transfer data to and fro. So yeah, I would probably say personally, I do like the iPad 2. That's not to say that I hate the Motorola Xoom. It is a slick piece of technology, but it is a very young operating system. It does have a lot of bugs right now. It doesn't do a lot of the things that it was heavily touted to do coming out of the gates. Hopefully within time, Android 3.0 will mature and it'll allow you to do things like Flash. It will allow me to transfer bought books from my PC to my device. It can't do any of that now, whereas the iPad can. So I would say, end all, Marcus recommends the iPad 2.
And I would lean a little bit more towards the Xoom, so you can see that we both give our thumbs up for each.
Okay, so this has just been a comparison video of the Motorola Xoom and the Apple iPad 2. For Giddy Reader, this is Marcus.
This is Nick.
Everybody take care.